Hello and welcome. You're currently tuned into TBD on KCSB FM 91.9 in Santa Barbara and KCSB.org to the rest of the world. Today, Lietoc and I are joined by Los Angeles-based electroacoustic maverick Byron Westbrook. He's released tapes and records on labels like Hands in the Dark, Important Records, Umor Rex, Root, Strata, and Psychic Troubles, as well as composed numerous works for installations. His latest CD, the 41-minute composition Translucence, is released on Shelter Press on June 21st. How you doing, Byron?
Doing good. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome, dude. Thanks for joining us. It's been a minute since we had you play with Turn on the Sunlight like a couple years back. How's things been going?
Yeah, going good. I've been it's interesting. That was a fun afternoon playing with Jesse. I've been working on my releases and art projects and whatnot. Really excited to have this new CD out, which has been really, really long in the works. That piece, I think I started work on that sometime around 2016.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Nice to finally see it come to fruition and have it be like an object that people can hold.
Sick. Well, I guess before we jump into more like your CV, just to keep it light in the beginning here, how's summer been for you, dude?
Oh, it's good. Yeah. We just, it was my partner's birthday on Saturday and we found like a cove in Orange County that was just like beautiful and we got to swim and that's like our highlight so far, I would say.
Was it South Orange County, like Dana Point or San Juan Capistrano area? It
was north of Dana Point. Nice. I don't know what it was because we really just like looked at a map and just pointed. And I think it was like a small cove next to a bunch of bigger ones that were really jammed with people. And this one, for some reason, it like wasn't really obvious. Mm-hmm. And we went down. It was super, super nice.
Sick, dude.
Yeah. The heat wave is intense. I'm finally running the AC in here, but
yeah. We just had a beach day not too long ago either. We went to, that beach, Dockweiler Beach by LAX. It's like the only beach in LA County that has like the fire pits or like the fire rings or whatever.
Oh, wow. No, I don't know about that.
It's pretty cool, but it's also probably one of the most like crowded beaches like in LA. So me and my girlfriend got there at like 7 a.m. to like secure like a fire pit, like, and then the rest of our friends like met us like throughout the day and just like hung out like, for whatever. And then we stayed there until midnight. So it was probably the longest beach day I think I've ever had, but like, it was pretty sick.
It was full marine layer when you got there?
Oh yeah, it was full marine layer. And then like we like kind of just chilled while it like burned off,
Yeah.
But it was cool. I don't know. We'll see if we ever do Dockweiler again, but I'm glad that like I finally got to experience it because I always saw like the fire pits, like riding bikes past like, that long, I guess like bike path that goes from like Malibu, like all the way down the coast.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. I've always like seen the fire pits there and I'm like, I want to do that one day. And then we tried last year to get a fire pit, but we showed up at like 10 a.m. or something and they're all taken. So,
yeah.
Finally got out of the way and the water was really nice. It was nice.
It was kind of perfect. It was like chill at first touch and then comfortable.
Yeah. And then we just like swam the whole day. It was perfect. Yeah.
So, yeah. Very cool.
Perfect time to hit the beach. But so we saw about 6 years ago you moved from New York to LA, right?
Yeah.
So which place had a better summer?
New York, it's really, it's intense. I mean, it's just all concrete that gets hot.
Yeah.
I think I did my MFA at Bard upstate and maybe that was in 2010. Mm-hmm. So I kind of learned about what it's like up there. That's amazing. That's incredible. And actually a bunch of friends have since like the big exodus during the pandemic sent a lot of friends up that way. And so that's like very good for summer. New York City was kind of intense for summer and I enjoy it here.
Yeah, for sure.
Even when it gets to like 100 degrees or whatever, I'm into it.
Yeah, you can go to the beach and cool off.
That was an important move, though. It was really, I think, well timed and was productive for me in terms of like my just like psychic space and my work.
Mm-hmm. So go ahead, Maddie, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was because you had mentioned kind of that exodus in the 20. You're just briefly saying that we've talked to a few musicians who've moved, maybe not just like to Bard, but to the Hudson Valley writ large. And then I know Sarah Haynes, she's based out there now, or she's doing stuff as well. So
yeah,
it just seems like
there's a whole mess of folks who are in Kingston and like who were in Kingston already, and then now that scene has kind of expanded into a thing that's kind of spread out, kind of in a similar way, the way LA, everybody's like a half hour apart. And it seems like it's kind of bustling there in a way in terms of like artistic conversation and whatnot.
Yeah, dude.
Totally.
But yeah.
Did the chance kind of for different collaborations though bring you down to LA? Because you talked about it being just like a good time to move as well, kind of psychically for you or other stuff?
Yeah, I'd been in New York for 15 years, and I kind of it was more that it was I just kind of been through so many different phases of being in New York. Like when I moved there, it was cheap.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
so
yeah.
It was the end of that kind of like warehouse era where you could get those multi-year leases on like a warehouse space or something.
Yeah, and I mean, I had my room was like $430 when I moved to New York. So
that is insane.
So yeah, it's just totally just a different era, and I think that when it got to 2017 or so, and I just a lot of friends had moved out here already, and like Jesse from Turn on the Sunlight, he'd been here for 10 years, and I'd been coming out here and visiting him, and some other folks that are kind of art world folks. And it just made a lot of sense to shift gears. And I grew up in a place that was where you had to drive to get everywhere, and so that dynamic was like just already like riding a bicycle for me. So yeah. But coming to LA was I think new collaborations was something that I had in mind with coming out here, and it still is something that's like a slow process. Like the project that I've kind of started or have been kind of exploring with my friend Bryce Bischoff, who's a photographer. And like I did a tour with Alex Pelly. She did video for my last LP record, and that came out in 2021, and that was like a really fun collaboration as well. And so I'm exploring a lot of things like that.
I'd seen that Alex Pelly was someone you had pretty consistently collaborated with, and in other interviews, you also talk about the desire for visual collaboration on the stuff that you do, specifically because really going through a lot of the stuff you've got, it's installation based, or really this is music that is based not for car stereos, even though, again, bringing up LA, that brings in a different kind of culture of listening when you get around. But really setting up not even like quite like an ambient system, but just 4 speakers or multiple speakers. And I'm wondering, because from like a review that we had read, there was like a quietistry. They talked about the pieces you make being like your gaze wandering over a brutalist kind of structure, or looking at architecture, just really deep listening and thinking about that space. And in LA, with the people you've been able to work with visually, or like with Jeremiah Shu on some stuff, do you feel like that is something that you've been able to do, or do you feel like you're even subverting that now?
Well, I mean, there's always, I mean, I guess there are two things. Like I'm always thinking in terms of visual with the sound, with sounds that I work with and sounds that I create. And I'm thinking of the sound as something that is architectural and as something that maybe informs the way people move through a space or interface with even the listening process. And so for the situation with, or the piece that I worked on with Jeremiah, which was a kind of a commission for high desert test sites where we were working within this structure that was made by a sculptor named Halsey Rodman. It's this triangular, you could call it a house. It's a triangular like space for people to inhabit that actually has three separate spaces that you can't move through on the interior. You can only go in and out of them from the outside. And we kind of devised a system that worked with the installation of the sound. It was actually 6 speakers, 2 speakers for each performer, because it was me, Jeremiah, and Celia Hollander. And each of us had a speaker inside the structure and a speaker outside the structure. And it, I guess the idea being that the way that we were working with the sound was to kind of encourage people to both go inside the structures and move around it. And so that event was crazy because it poured snow on us, which we hadn't expected, and we were able to do it anyway. We were just, I won't explain the technical aspect of how we were able to do it anyway, but we did it anyway and it worked. And people, it really did offer people a way to kind of explore that structure in a way that I think they wouldn't have otherwise. But I guess that's kind of using the sound that we offered and the interface. I guess that's the other aspect, because I kind of think of things as sound as architectural. The sound helps like facilitate space, but then there's also the focus on the concept of interface and how an audience is going to listen, and just how like putting on headphones versus walking around versus being in a space where they're talking and there's background music, or something where it's like an immersive scenario.
And that again even includes like if weather can play a part in that. So that's why also like, the snow stuff really could make that event or play with that interface. Yeah,
it was sort of a very, very happy accident that the folks who High Desert Test Sites hired to do the tech for that were so good. Also, the system that I had devised for like how things were going to be, like one inside and one outside, it just turned out that we had one waterproof speaker for each.
Oh, wow.
And we reversed them, and then it was able to go on, and also when we reversed where we were going to be. But it was sort of a fluke, but also it was a really nice event, and nice to see people move through it. I think there's talk of like doing something at that structure again at some point in the future, but it hasn't been figured out yet.
Dang,
that'd be so sick to see.
Yeah, it was really great. I couldn't believe it. That place is in the middle of nowhere. It is just like,
where is that at again? Like, where is that located?
It's in Pioneer Town, but it's like 35 minutes off of the road, just really, really in a desolate, unmarked area. It was just
Pioneer, man.
And but a lot of people came out. It was super wild. Yeah.
It's funny because I think about, there's that in Pioneer Town. They also have the Joshua Tree Festival that happens in a few months from now. Derek Moneypenny, I know, has like a space out there, and he's hosted stuff. And you've got
that Firehouse.
Fire. Yeah. And I'm kicking myself because I wish I could go out there. And then you have Harry and Pappy's, but like there's a scene, or there's consistent just happenings like that in Joshua Tree. So
there kind of is. Yeah.
And
it was great to have that opportunity to work out there.
Oh, man.
And I ended up staying in Andrea Zatel's house. That was part of the deal that we all stayed there.
Oh, that's sick.
She stopped. She moved on to another house, and they just consider her house one of the artworks, and they would put up artists when they have residencies there. So, but yeah,
that's so cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Is that like documented anywhere, like for anybody to like check that out, like any like, I don't know, videos or like photos or something that people can see?
It is. Well, there are photos on my website. I've been meaning to go. We do have a bunch of video of it. The video was tricky because it was pouring snow. So a lot of what we have is kind of like people's phones got kind of pummeled with water. But it's like on my list to kind of dig through that video. There's a lot of photos that were taken and video that was taken, and just haven't pieced it into something that fits nicely on a website yet.
Hey, well, we'll be looking forward to it when it comes out. That's sick.
Yeah.
Maddie, where should we hop into next?
Honestly, I think we should go with kind of the classic. I know this is a bit of like an origin question, but you had mentioned growing up in a place where cars were bigger. That was kind of, you had to drive to get to places. And from what we'd seen, you grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Yeah. And I'm just so curious, because to get to that spot where you're staying out there in Joshua Tree, how did you kind of first get the inklings of finding new music, or really stuff out there that pushed you in that direction, or at least got you to like UT Austin for the fine arts program?
Oh yeah. I went to the high school I went to, which is called Baton Rouge High School, which my parents went to and my grandparents went to.
Oh wow.
Yeah, somehow somehow that high school in the 70s or 80s got converted into a performing arts high school with no football team or anything like that. And they really treated the jazz program as like a thing that was like it was competitive. You did all of these like state competitions and whatnot with the few other schools that were like that. But I had some really good teachers there that were into, semi-out music, and like enough that it got me curious. And I mean, also just like the process. I mean, because we had like the big band and the little band, and part of the improv classes was just like a listening day, and they had this huge record collection.
Oh wow.
Sick. Yeah. It's like this giant wall of records, and the music director would just be like, you guys, let's go. We'd pull records and talk to them about them, and then we'd listen to stuff and put records on. And it was just like, I mean, I remember like listening to him pulling out Coltrane Ascension and saying, he's saying, this record's crazy, let's put this on. And we checked it out. So I had that, and then it was the 90s, and there was more niche stuff going on. Oh, my high school also had a radio station that was like a college radio station.
Really? That is crazy.
And so we got promos. And I had, my girlfriend at the time was a DJ. And so I would get like handed promos for things that were coming out. And it was just, we were, and I think I just kind of followed that thread, and I kind of went through phases of being into more niche music and less, but like the real, I got out of Baton Rouge really quick too. I mean, I went straight to Austin, and then from there went to New York. But in terms of like the origin story stuff, it was like getting asked to go meet Phil Niblock and see if I wanted to work for him by his exiting assistant was like the big game changer for me, that introduced me to like the sphere that I'm been more part of since.
Before.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, wait, no. Did you have anything, Thomas?
Oh, I was just going to say, like, that is so crazy. Like, what an opportunity to, like, go to a high school like that. Like, I feel like I would have always, like, wanted to go to a high school like that, you know? Especially having, like, a radio station. Like, that's insane to, like, think that a high school would have, like, a cool radio station like that.
Yeah, it was for what it's worth. They were playing like smooth jazz during the day, during the week. And I think like I think it technically was a nonprofit, but there's donations and I don't know what goes on with how the money moves there, but there was some reason that they had that format in the daytime, but then at nighttime, it was just sort of free for all. Students go for it. And,
sick.
It was crazy that they were able to do that. I don't know that it's still like that either.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I wonder if it's like still like that nowadays. Like,
yeah,
pretty sick.
WBRH, I think it was 90.3 or 90.5. Oh, wow. Baton Rouge area.
Yeah, that would still be a community or freeform station frequency.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
sick. I'll have to go ahead, Maddie.
No, also just in that time as well, because when you talk about niches or little things, and someone of your age that was encountering at least that visually on the TV, did you watch like MTV's 120 Minutes or any stuff? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Did you tape any VHS stuff? Because we've talked to a few people who like religiously taped it or loved 120 Minutes. That was the Bible.
Yeah, that was weird. I absolutely like finding out about My Bloody Valentine from 120 Minutes. And like I was more specifically into a lot of the shoegaze stuff at that time.
Oh, sick.
So you were specifically following, because I'll turn my camera. I don't know if you can see, but I have like a collection of a lot of that 90s stuff on tape. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
There, but yes, like, yeah, I'm into that as well. I love the Anglo side of that. Visually, it's a blast. I love shit like Swerve Driver chapter.
I was just gonna say, I saw Swerve Driver play in 1993.
That's so sick.
And actually, that was one of the advanced. I got the advanced cassette. There was like a mezcal head. That's it.
Damn, that is insane.
I got the A&M advanced. I gave it back. I was too. When the record came out, I gave it back to my friend who I don't think he was going to play it. I should have, and I was just thinking about how I should have kept that. But it was funny because a group of us, this is a story, a group of us went to see Smashing Pumpkins in November, and we're kind of like going to go. And didn't know that Swerve Driver was the opening band. Oh, and Smashing Pumpkins was a mess. Swerve Driver opened and just like, it was like very, very tight, very good band. It was just like right as that record that you just held up was coming out. Really super memorable show. And come to find out, like a good friend of mine who I met in New York, who makes experimental music, Dwayne Petrie, was at that show.
Oh, sick, dude. Wow.
We met and then he and I met in New York later. And I think we're friends for a couple of years before we realized, because he's from Louisiana also, but from New Orleans. But we later realized, we both were into like Swerve Driver and My Bloody Valentine. We both were at that show, and he has the same memory that I have of that being the highlight of that night by far. But
that's so sick.
Yeah. Wild. Different times, it's too bad because it seems like that, like in that era, I think it was before everything had really turned into conglomerates, and there were labels with big distribution that were just throwing darts at stuff and just trying to see what would hit. And they would put money into a small band making a record for a decent amount of money that of course they owed back. But, I think just now we don't have those same kind of distribution routes for music in that way.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I had just read, there's a new book and I just turned it back into the library. It's 1999, the year like the music industry lost it all or something. And it's one of the guys, he's written for The Quietest before, but he basically writes about 1999 with the advent of Napster, with the fact that CD sales have peaked, the music industry completely fails to figure out how to go digital or like how to move beyond this moneymaker that's a time bomb for them. And big shout outs like to the chapters on MP3, the chapters on Bowie, and just the majors like having no clue what to do and completely screwing over everyone in the process.
Yeah, I need to check that out. That's a good recommendation. I think, yeah. I wonder, does he talk another piece of the picture then was just Clinton signed something that allowed all people to own multiple radio stations and television stations.
Oh, wow. Really?
I think that was.
It doesn't think that is so critical. The 1996 Federal Telecommunications Act, I've seen covered, I want to say, in Uproot, which also is another great, that's DJ Rupture's book on just like his kind of like 15 years from 2001 to 2016, his 15 years of just being a DJ traveling around the world and looking at technology and stuff and different law. But that absolutely impacted Federal Telecommunications Act even to this day. Yeah.
Yeah. It just, I think that after that, there was a lot less in terms of like things higher up on the dial, having DJs that really had a lot of choice for what they could play.
For sure.
And so I think that changed it, but I'm definitely very interested in that. And I want to check out that book.
With your time at UT Austin, just before jumping and meeting Phil Nilbach, because you were in a band that was on polyvinyl. This is where you really jumped into. Oh no, we're seeing the hands, but can you at least then indicate in any way how you got into contact with the figure behind that band, Mark Duplass?
Oh, yeah, we had common friends in Austin. My roommate played in his band before that, but yeah, I mean, that's like a past life. Yeah, a real past life that doesn't really have much to do with what I do. It was really sort of like getting a job working for somebody else doing something for them.
Oh, so, I see. Yeah.
Any ways that in New York connect you to that scene with Phil, or was that, how did then that gal get involved?
Yeah, really, when I moved to New York, I just had, when I lived in Austin, I played in a lot of bands. I had a really good friend who was an amazing drummer, and we played in a number of bands together. That was the one you mentioned was one of them. And we both moved to New York at the same time, and we started doing a thing that was more like my compositions. And that had a life of a few years. And the Phil Niblock connection is that like my like post-rock band thing that I did in New York for the first couple of years, the keyboard player went back to school for his MFA at Columbia. And one of his classmates in his class had been working for Phil and needed to phase out. And he just like said, "Oh, do you know anybody that would want to do this? Like Phil's looking for somebody new to kind of take over the like what I've been doing." And somebody forwarded me an email, and I called Phil on the phone, and he said, "Come over." And he had like an event with this South American composer showing computer music and weird generative video stuff. That was just like a salon event. And I sat around and chatted with Phil afterwards, and we both like 1960s Dynaco hi-fi equipment. And that was sort of the beginning of the dynamic that was just kind of us having a really specific approach to tech. And I think that was a lot of what I did with Phil. So,
with Phil, at least, because you mentioned the tech, and that has played a bit of a piece in the work you've done, not because you amass so much tech, but you work within a pretty interesting set of limits. But specifically, like, just what was he kind of imparting on you with some of the tech you were working with, what did you really gain from that? And then also as a process, or kind of just in thinking about how you wanted to present music, what was that like?
There was there's a lot. So here's the thing. So with Phil has an organization. I feel like this is something that is more known in just New York and in Europe, but Phil has had, sadly, concerts in his loft since the 70s, and has a nonprofit called Experimental Intermedia Foundation. And he used to have 4 concert series a year that would be a month long until the late 80s. And then it got kind of whittled down to just 2, but then with like one-off events also. But I was responsible for like being the liaison with the artists. So we're talking like 10 artists per season. And then there was a residency program that was funded by someone in Portugal, where a Portuguese student would come and I would have to help them find all the things that they need. But basically, I had to produce 20 concerts a year with these like people, a wide range of age, often like kind of like sometimes like major luminary types, like Philip Jack or something along these lines.
Again, just right by me. Also, just hanging out over there.
It's just so I'd have to just set up the room for whatever it was that they need. And Phil's space was such a modular sound system. It was like a quad system.
Oh, sick.
Plus extra speakers. I mean, for the composer Larry Austin, we did an octaphonic one time.
So sick.
But there, I had to get inside all of these people's brains. And so it's just, I'm getting flooded. My experience was just getting flooded with all of these ideas and possibilities for like different ways of approaching like sound and video. And then in 2007, Phil and his partner were like, we're going to Europe for the summer. Do you want to live in the loft while we're gone? And so then I started getting to sublet my apartment and live in the loft and just like work in there. And so I just had like this, like 2007 was a huge development phase for me. And so, it was so, and that's not even like sitting with Phil talking about what it is that he would be working on, which was also always some kind of very like a minutia problem solving thing with converting video or finding a new way to shift pitch that doesn't produce artifacts. So there, I think I would say that during that time between 2005 and then into summer 2007 was sort of when I started my really performing by myself, and developing it as a thing that at its start, I used a lot of speakers. That was like a major piece of what I was doing. So,
go ahead, Maddie. What were you saying?
Oh no, you got this.
I was just gonna say, do you still have like records and stuff from that era that you're like proud of and whatnot?
I only put out one record that is of that era, which was the Corridors CD that Sedimental put out.
Oh, sick.
And that's kind of that's sort of the document of that. I've thought about I have tons of recordings of that stuff. But it was very, very drone based, but most of it actually used recordings of other instruments, other people playing instruments.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Affected through computer processing and, there's no like modular synth or anything involved with that. But a lot of it also, like a live performance for me back then, would be a combo of like me kind of playing back granular stuff off of mini discs, but sent to different speakers. And then also me just playing guitar and I had a way that I could have 5 speakers set up and throw guitar feedback to one, and then use the feedback off of that one to pitch shift to a different speaker. And so I'd kind of do this rotating harmonic shift thing with guitar feedback.
Dude, that sounds insane to like, I don't know, even just be a listener in like a space where you have like, I don't know, you said like 8 speakers or something, or I don't know.
Yeah. Those were like 5 or 6 when I blew with the guitar. Yeah. But yeah,
that's crazy. Like that just sounds sick.
Yeah, that was fun. It was a lot of work to set that up and have it work. And I always have to play from the middle of the room. I've been thinking about going back to the other recordings of that, because I think that there's a lot that could be interesting to revisit. But yeah, have a lot on my plate for new work.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, maybe one day it'd be cool to hear eventually if that comes out. But
with oh man, there's so many great places to go, but we'll just try to keep with what we've got. Some equipment at least that you've pretty consistently used, or two things that like you love to use. A Yamaha DX7 that goes back about 20 years. That might be is that the longest running piece of equipment you've been recording with albums that isn't like a guitar on occasion?
Yeah, the DX7 is really like it's interesting. I make good research, because I think I forget that really is. I have a DX7 that belonged to my dad.
Oh wow!
I've had since I think I took it away in college, and I actually don't have that one anymore. I have the like a rack mount brain, but yeah, that's probably the longest running, and that thing is endless because you can make micro tunings with it in terms of like possibilities, and it's so esoteric, and you can make it sound like a guitar and make it sound like guitar feedback.
So what exactly is a Yamaha DX7 for anybody that doesn't know what that is?
It was one of the first consumer digital synthesizers that I think came out in the mid 80s. It was famous for Brian Eno using it a lot on records.
Oh wow, yeah.
I want to say the Cure as well. I forget. I know the DX7 plays a big role on or on some stuff, but yeah.
Really? Wow, that's sick.
Yeah, everybody's heard it. I mean, it's also guilty of being it can be one of the cheesiest sounding digital synthesizers. I think like the theme to the Doogie Howser television show.
Oh, really?
You know what that is. It's just, there are a lot of like simulated Rhodes sounds up there, but yeah,
that's funny.
It's also notoriously, the one other key thing about the DX7 is that it is notoriously hard to program.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. It's not, because the logic is not at all like a waveform and then a filter. Mm-hmm. It's frequency modulation. It's this like very like getting into calculus. Sort of, it's like heavy multiplication of waveforms, and in order to, and like the controlling the amplitude of the multiplication of these waveforms. It's a real a real mess in terms
that sounds very complicated. I feel like.
Yeah. And actually what I found was an amazing thing to do with it is to just go into the programming tools and not know what you're doing and just try to mess it up as much as possible.
Yeah.
And you can just find stuff that's like insane, crazy squealing feedback and very beautiful tones that come out that like you'll find a place where you take your hands off of it and it's just doing stuff and doing generative things just like a modular might, but it's not something. It's so, because it's digital, it's like a whole lot of processing of lots of waveforms going on, and it's a crazy thing. It's on my new record a lot. actually.
Oh, really? Oh, that's sick.
I didn't realize how much it was on there actually until just kind of going back and listening to it during the process of the release. But I did a residency in 2018 at Banff Center in Canada, and they had a Mark I DX7, which is the it's like that's the one that Brian Eno used, the model that he used the most. But the key thing with that one is that it's very heavy, and its output converters are like a lower grade. So it's real hissy and dirty sounding. And that was sort of my one chance to hang out with that iteration of that instrument and just get to know it. And I made some fun stuff with it.
So sick. Do you have any recordings of that? Or
I mean, that's on Translucence.
Oh, that's on Translucence. Oh, that's sick.
It's like, I feel like most of the synthesizer on that album is either from that DX7 at the Banff residency, and then the Buchla and the Surge from EMS Stockholm, or EMS as they call, which was in 2016. I'll like gather sounds. I'm always gathering stuff. Yeah. But the work isn't the sounds. The work is like the cataloging and then kind of figuring out like a conceptual structure. It's like thinking of it like, we're going back to the architecture thing that we were talking about. Yeah. Sort of thinking of them as like materials and figuring out a way that to put it together, build something, and then also think of it in terms of a time-based experience for a listener. And then also thinking about it in terms of how the interface might be ideally. And so, yeah,
with what you're saying, I get that, because it's like the creativity, where it actually comes from, this piece, it's generated though out of just, you have put in that actual work with playing around with the instruments or cataloging the field recordings, and you can start to see the system and the piece itself, Translucence. Because when Thomas sent to me, he's like, Matt, you got to look at this. This is really weird. But what I loved about it was the snaps, the fact that you had these self-contained worlds. The CD sequence as just a straight 44-minute piece with no breaks, or is it like the MP3s that
it's meant to be a full listen through? Yeah, and it actually that piece sat unfinished for a long time and kind of went through so many different iterations, and the way that it got finished was my friend Micah Silver, who used to his specialty is multi-channel audio. That's what his career is built around. He helped develop the Impact Center in upstate New York, which is has 100 something speakers in the theater. But he just took it down this black box space in the South Bay here. With a 16-channel sound system in it, where he does work. He works internationally, and this is sort of his showroom that he had. And he was going away, and he said, "Hey, you want to come down and just work in my space and work on a piece?" And this was in 2022, early 2022. So 2.5 years ago at this point. And so I spent 3 weeks in Micah's space with the materials for Translucence, which had been only worked on in stereo format. And I placed everything in space. And then I realized what was missing. And I was able to go back and change some of the sounds, make some new sounds, pull things out of the catalog, and sort of reanimate things in ways that made that concept really breathe. In terms of the after image concept and moving through spaces and having things collapse and expand the way that it does. And half of the recording is actually a render that Micah did of a binaural simulation of the multi-channel mix.
Wow.
Interesting.
So
it's it's cutting between a stereo mix and a rendering of the multi-channel mix. It's not, some of the sections of it played just didn't translate when you brought it down to a binaural mix, and so those are reduced. They're not like, it's not as much stuff going on, but there is a multi-channel version of this that I'm gonna start presenting later this year and into next year.
It's just against the limitations of doing that for the physical media.
Yeah.
I see what you mean. And again, it's emphasized to listen to this piece on speakers, not on it sounds decent on laptop, but that's not the way to do it.
Yeah, you'll get more out of it if you have speakers spread apart, because there's all of this stuff where where the phase of one speaker is out with the other, either from the binaural simulation, that's just how it ends up being, or I've done this for years with stereo sound, which is really problematic with making records, to have the phase like slightly flipped, and it makes it sound like it's coming from behind you. You can, but you need speakers spread apart for it to actually do this, or to listen to it through headphones, because the left and right channels have to kind of divide to your ears.
Yeah.
For the effect to work. But the translucence had to be a CD. That was
for sure. I was going to say, I don't think that would translate.
It couldn't cut to a record. It'd kick the needle out.
Oh, wow. That's so wild.
Yeah. You don't hear about it. It does happen. I remember there's a couple releases on the Hasu Mountain CD label Blorpus, where he's like, we can't put this out. Or it was Husky Pants. He couldn't put a Mux out on vinyl. And I'm thinking about an old Flying Saucer Attack CD I've got.
Oh, wow.
It's just like a single, but Domino could only put it on CD. And it says on the vinyl for the US on Drag City, fixed by Jim O'Rourke. Only Jim had figured out how to master it for the vinyl. But that's so interesting to hear, because other stuff you have does work for vinyl. Also works, again, extremely well on for channel or just on any speaker. But the 2017 piece is probably my favorite one I gotten to hear of yours, because you have that movement. I can see where the after image idea is starting to come into play. And I think that's a great way about talking about this, because it's approaching what I'm hearing as a listener. And for Thomas and I, who we interview other musicians like from Hasu Mountain Spaces or Orange Milk stuff, there's a definite intersection with this in your music, but it comes from such a different spot. And with the synths you use on it that you were playing around in 2016, I also thought about some of Keith Fullerton Whitman and how he for like the 2005 album Multiples, that was really him going to Harvard and having that opportunity to fool around with technology. And then even playing into the 2010 stuff he's done.
Yeah, Keith is great. Keith, I've done like I think 3 bills with Keith.
Oh, that's so sick!
Over the course of time. I think what's the piece that Root Strata put out? I'm forgetting it. It's the first one that's like the Terry Riley type stuff, but just like a generative.
Your one on Root Strata that you did?
Well, I'm speaking. They did a tape for Keith.
Oh, sick!
Right.
It's the first iteration of like something that he's done a bunch of times that sounds like Terry Riley. And I think hearing that was also really hearing him do that was also kind of. I definitely appreciated that this was like we played this. Issue Project Room Festival for Eliane Radigue, where they actually brought her.
Oh, wow.
And we were this night in between her performances where it was supposed to be artists presenting things that were along the lines of what she did. And I did my guitar thing. And Keith came in with this like very fast I don't know why I can't remember the name of it right now, but anyway, Root Strata ended up, I think, releasing that. I think it was that recording of that night, possibly. Yeah. But yeah, Keith does great work. I appreciate that you see that connection.
Oh, totally. No, I mean, again, I have a few of the tapes he put out in 2020, and I've got the Cranky albums, and I love Playthroughs was a major release for me. And the fact that he also has found a way to make his it very readable about what he's doing, I found it exciting to understand and approach this music. So thank you, Keith.
Yeah, I know. I mean, if you're looking for like other folks in that sphere, I mean, I studied with Marcus Schmickler at Bard. He was there all 3 years, and he's like the German sort of master of like C sound and super collider. And I think,
wow,
like,
that's crazy.
I don't use any of those, but I had a lot of conversations with Marcus about tuning, and I think just there were readings that he had us look at that really, really stuck with me, that were just about listening. And there's this book by a guy named Barry Blesser called Spaces Speak, Are You Listening? That just talks about sort of the general like approach to how people perceive sound, just very broadly. Like some of it applies to music, some of it applies to film sound. It's just sort of, and Marcus, like, I think him giving that to us at school at Bard was like a huge deal for me. I took a lot from that. But yeah, Marcus and Florian Hecker is incredible too.
Oh, so sick.
Oh,
well, I don't know, how much time do we have left, Byron? We don't want to like go too much over.
Yeah, if you have maybe start. I am starting to get hungry, spacey, but
yeah.
A good out spot. Perhaps a good way to close this up, because God, there's so much like to go on about the music or all this other stuff, all these different works. But you talk about this book, you're giving a great recommendation. I did want to talk about 2 mixes that you've done.
Oh, sure.
To talk about some other music and tie a few things together. So the first one I wanted to talk about, I saw Philip Sherburne at Pitchfork had written about this one for Slow Breathing Circuit, Variations on Distortion.
Oh, yeah.
Especially after the shoegaze conversation from earlier, I think this makes even more sense now, because I was looking at it and I was like, hey, it's all of my favorite. I've seen this term used to classify some of this drambient gaze, which is a dream, ambient, shoegaze, noise, but it was like the Yellow Swans. Jeffrey Cantu Ledesma, that's Mr. Root Strata. So
yeah, he's been a huge supporter of my work through the years, and we even made I'm even on I'm very prominently on the Echoing Green record. If you want to hear me play guitar.
Oh, sick, dude!
I love all those Mexican Summer albums, and the Geographic North tape is so big for me. So
I think that's his best record.
I think that is absolutely
it's such a good one. But
seeing that
mix,
there was Rafael Toral as well on there.
Oh, yeah.
Another name who's come up in influencer stuff. Did you ever share a bill with him before?
Rafael Toral, I worked with him at Phil's. He was one of the. Oh,
wow, that's so sick.
He was one that I mentioned, that Portuguese residency program that Phil had. Rafael was one of either the first or the second resident. I was not working for Phil yet, but he was like, I think they did that program for 15 or 20 years, and he came to New York, did that. I think that's probably where he met Jim O'Rourke.
Wow.
I might be wrong, so don't quote me on that, but I'm good. I would bet that could be because Phil and O'Rourke were friends, and that would make sense. And one of Phil's records is like Raphael and O'Rourke. It's the guitar 2-for-4 when on Moakai. That O'Rourke put out in like 2000, I think. And so both of those folks are on that. Raphael. So I ran sound for a Raphael Toral show and got to hang out with him for a bit. He was deep in the like space what is space station or space
the program, whatever it is, but
space, space program, I guess. Yeah. Where it was just like mono, very performative stuff where he's just like moving around with like a controller device.
The release this year, because that was where I had seen the name, and this one this year is incredible. I've got a CD of it. I've got a bunch of libraries in the area to have bought it. So I hope.
Oh, that's great! It's so good. He's like, he really like made a solid like second reinvention of himself.
It's a lot to take in, but I loved because I had heard his critical 90s release. And again, with the shoegaze stuff where he had come out of like clearly loved My Bloody Valentine. Also where he saw Nirvana and the sound was so bad and he had thought so his like even origin story on that. It relating to all of this and with some of the just kind of that 2010 stuff that you were curating and the stuff on this mix, I really started to see also where that influence is coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I love that music, and I'll probably make Distortion Hue, the record that I did in 2021, was definitely like sort of taking a shot towards that direction. And I have some other material that is kind of hanging out that we'll probably explore that idea again.
Oh yeah, the last big rec or area, because we've talked to other musicians who love the shit out of the label, and it's not Windham Hill, it's ECM.
Oh, and yeah.
Show this year, you had a killer one with them. You had Hassel, you had the James Newton, the Meredith Monk. Yeah. I'm curious about what in the catalog have you found that really has moved you, or just kind of like in the esoteric ends like that you weren't able to play on the show, or you keep coming back to?
I love that James Newton record. I actually basically did that mix just so I could play a big chunk of that James Newton record. That was because it's especially like in there's a lot of wind instrument stuff going on these days, and I like his it's like the super virtuosic playing that with like these like the kind of clean effects of ECM recordings. It was just I just thought it was interesting to kind of throw into the conversation because it's a record that I think people would enjoy now, and it's like really surprisingly like contemporary sounding. So there's that. I'm trying to remember what was on there. I have a stack of them somewhere back here.
If there's any other ones that you just want to shout out that you didn't even play, because I'm just taking Rex for ECM at the end of the day.
God, there's so much stuff. And it's also the question of whether you're in like the ECM new. There's a Chelsea one that I love actually. Jonto Chelsea, the composer. That's a CD. I think like 90s era, not something I could have played then, but he's someone who is all about kind of intuitive tuning. And I think Tashi Wada really pulls a lot from Chelsea. Okay.
Interesting. I'll have to look into that. Did you ever hear like the Stephen Mikus one, the Music of the Stones or Spirit? I think it's Music of the Stones, where he plays with a sound rock. It's great. That one's a heater.
The other one that I would that Bengt Berger bitter funeral blues.
Oh, okay.
That one is crazy. I didn't get to. Did I get to play much of that? I think if I played that, I played it just on the way out. But the first track on that is really wild and weird, and just kind of like a. It just doesn't. There's nothing easy about it at all. That's this weird, like dark march kind of thing.
That's the most fun with ECM. I find is when you find those records that go against Manfred or go against kind of the label, but still completely bested or.
Yeah, there's so much in there. It goes so deep, and I'm bad at remembering names a lot of the time. I can remember But
there's like a drum and bass album on ECM from the 90s, one of the new jams.
Oh, is there actually?
I mean, I've got it up here.
That's wild.
It's Nils. It's Nils Petter Molvar. This one has a.
oh, whoa! Wait, I feel like I've seen that cover.
Let me see if the covers, and it's different. There's a different cover for online, but it's called Khmer Khmer, Khmer. Doing a terrible pronunciation.
Oh, okay. Like, yeah, KH. I feel like that came up. Send me if you don't mind. I'd love to have the link for that to just go fish around for it.
Yeah, I'll shoot it to you. Yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to that one too. That sounds sick, Maddie.
Yeah.
That one, because it's like stuff that Hassel started doing after his ECM, like the 2018 and 2020 one that he had. And Hassel's ones are great as well.
Mhm.
Power was a great one, and the 2008 one's gorgeous.
That's sick.
I didn't realize that Power Spot was one of the first Eno Lenoir collaborations.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I think that my favorite thing about that guy Lanois is his bass sounds, and it's there on Power Spot. And I think it's maybe one of the nicest use of that bass sound, where it's just this like deep, muted, kind of thumpy bass sound, and it just it is so perfect for Hassel's music. But
absolutely, no, the bass on those Hassel recordings is really great. I forgot, I love it on 2. On Fourth World Volume 2.
Oh yeah, that's a great record. I got to
share that with a bunch of people, and then I went and chased after the tape, and it's fun because it has the bonus cut mixed into it, and I really love the sequencing of that album. He had a very clear kind of structure with like a climax and piece of falling action and then a conclusion. I've never other ones of his don't quite have that, but to me is really, really like, oh, I could just see that, and I liked it.
I'm real tapped into the stereo stuff that is like at the front end of Fourth World 2.
Yes.
It's like really like nicely like fluttery and kind of working with it's almost what's that? There's like that therapy method that people EMDR like is what they call it.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah.
Well, I guess should we start tying things up then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I think you got a great end there. Thank you for this rec.
Where can I guess as we tie things up, where can people keep up with all things Byron Westbrook?
It's the social media stuff is a good place to see what's current. I do have I have the Byron Westbrook Instagram and Twitter handles or whatever. I don't really use Twitter though. And I refuse to call it whatever it's called now. And yeah, just my website, byronwestbrook.com has things. I don't have any shows announced right now, but there will be some stuff in the fall.
Oh, sick, dude. Well, excited to see what you do in the fall. We do have like one more question. It's kind of like the biggest of the show. Maddie, do you want me to take it or?
Thomas, I think you can do this one.
Okay. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
Okay.
So you're going to throw a softball here. Or a hardball.
A rat is going to jump into your mouth. Do you want this rat to jump into your mouth head first or butt first, and why?
Oh, that is a hardball. Oof. God.
You can ask questions about the rat and help you make it more calm.
I mean, I think I'm probably going to take butt first because I know what I'm getting more.
Yeah.
the teeth are worse than the butt.
That's true, I guess. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's a firm answer there.
I respect that answer. You don't want to get your tongue pierced by a rat.
Yeah.
Logical. All right, Byron. Well, thanks everybody for tuning into TBD on KCSB FM 91.9 in Santa Barbara and KCSB.org. This has been Byron Westbrook out of LA. Thanks so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure having you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.